Well, I'm so honored to be among this incredible group of women as a South Sound woman to watch. Extremely humbled by this amazing opportunity. So thank you, South Sound Magazine and Premier Media. I'm particularly really thrilled to be here today because I love living in Tacoma and I love being part of the South Sound community. So, thank you. So I was born and raised in New England, Massachusetts to be specific, by two really loving parents who raised me with the values, among others, but for adventure, for being true to myself, and for a strong value for living a healthy lifestyle and being active. I'm really so grateful that my folks actually flew in yesterday from the East Coast to be here tonight, too. So when I was, after college, the call of the Pacific Northwest came to me, and so I moved to Washington, and without really a set plan for my career. I wasn't sure what I wanted to do yet. I had so many interests, but not really one set passion. So I didn't have one linear, which I was supposed to have. So I decided to, as I said, I moved to Washington, and then partway through my 20s, I decided to move back to China, where I'd studied abroad, pursue my interest in teaching, and to brush up on my Mandarin skills. While I was there, I joined a running club, and I ran in a citywide race in Shanghai, which gave me the opportunity to, or I qualified rather, for an international championship race back here in the US. Oops, I meant to advance that slide. So, 21st, 2013, I towed the starting line of a race course in upstate New York, actually, with about 100 other runners from around the world. And I remember the starting line and looking around and thinking, I do not fit in here. These guys look serious. So my only goal was not to come in last. The starting gun went off, and I lunged forward with all the other runners, but as I stepped across the 1 mile marker, I suddenly had this stabbing pain right above my eyebrow that quickly spread across the top of my head to the back of my neck. With every single breath and every heartbeat, I felt that pain. I felt that pain in my heartbeat. The runner, I trained myself to push through aches and pains, and so I did exactly that. Over the next 20 minutes, I became increasingly weak on my left side, developed some tunnel vision, and became unusually extremely exhausted. Again, pushing through, crossed the finish line, and not one, not two, but 3 groups of bystanders recognized that something with me was extremely wrong. Unbeknownst to me, my face was drooping, I was walking crookedly, and I wasn't able to maintain eye contact. Fortunately, and I thank those strangers wherever they are in the world now, they very forcibly brought me to the medical tent nearby, laid me on a gurney, and a doctor was there instantly, noticed the asymmetry in my face and said, "Emily, you're having a stroke. We need to get you to the hospital right away." At this point, I was completely paralyzed on my left side. So nothing can prepare you for what it's like to go from being young and carefree and healthy one moment to potentially facing your deathbed the next. Scans proved that I did indeed have a major stroke, and I later learned that this white area in this brain scan represents about 24% of my brain cells that were damaged by the stroke. The hospital called my parents, and I'll never forget hearing their voice on the phone on the other end. They said, "Honey, there are no more flights to Rochester right now. We're getting in the car and we'll see you at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning." I'm sure you can imagine how terrifying that entire evening was. I was woken up every 20 minutes to assess my vital signs and to ensure that the life-saving drug I'd received was in fact working. I will forever remember seeing my folks walk in the door from my hospital room, knowing that I made it through the night. The weeks and months and years, frankly, that followed that stroke were a long, slow, uphill battle for my family and I. We learned that in addition to the physical deficits I had to overcome, I had very many mental deficits as well. In no particular order, my short-term memory has been impaired. I learned that I could no longer add and subtract simple numbers. My executive functioning was impaired, which in short essentially means the ability to problem solve and set and achieve goals. So pretty much work at a job, right? In addition to that, I will always deal with chronic fatigue for the rest of my life. So those first acute moments following my beginning my stroke recovery, I was sleeping upwards of 18 hours a day, recovering at my folks' back in Massachusetts. Needless to say, I never made it back to China. Another thing that happened is some of my oldest friends stopped calling, which I later realized it's got to be the most sobering thing to watch your peer in her 20s suffer a stroke. So in some ways, I can't blame them. But all of that combined really led me to feel as though I had been taken away from myself, and yet I was living through that loss. I was determined to prove that I'm still capable and I'm still here. And I remember telling my parents, I don't want what happened to me to go to waste. I survived this for a reason. The longer I was able to stay awake, I decided to start volunteering. My mom has always been a proponent of volunteering and said it's important for us to put others before ourselves. And I think, especially in today's society, we tend to be so caught up in how things affect us and how they pertain to us, and we really kind of don't look farther from our own hand. So I thought, I can't work a full-time job, why not volunteer? And I figured if I could share my stroke experience and have it benefit someone in some way, or perhaps even save a life, that's a no-brainer, pun intended. Nothing, however, could have prepared me for the incredible opportunities that arose simply from being willing to share my experience and being willing to be vulnerable. Three of those are on the slides here. I was on the Today Show with Hoda Kotb. Crazy. I peaked at age 30. I was invited to join the advisory board of the National Institute of Neurological Disorders and Stroke, part of the NIH, which is something I'm extremely proud of to this day. And perhaps most proud, in 2015, I ran the Boston Marathon, setting a PR for myself, having raised $18,000 for stroke research. I'm also excited to share that next year I'll be marrying the most patient man I've ever met. However, in spite of all these achievements and these accolades and opportunities, that many of which I didn't really seek out, but was so grateful for nonetheless, in between all of these events, I began to suffer some new major health setbacks that really weren't visible to people outside my immediate circle. I developed migraines, which to our knowledge, no one in my family history has ever had. I began losing my vision, which I later realized intermittently, but would follow moments of stress and fatigue throughout my life. So I can't tell you how many times I've pulled over into the breakdown lane of I-5 when my vision has come in and out. Moments like that made me realize I'm living this second life, and I didn't survive the first time just to be killed by being irresponsible the second. So, in spite of not wanting to do so, I ended up having to take a medical leave of absence from my new job. During that time, I had no choice but to prioritize my health yet again and kind of rediscover what it is that makes me me in this second life I'm leading. So research shows that there are plenty of health benefits from non-medical activities or opportunities. So during this medical leave, I discovered I love gardening, and it really does feel good for the soul. I'm not good at it. I grew 2 sunflowers this year, but I grew them by myself. I've also rediscovered a love for cooking. Again, not the best cook, but I have so much fun experimenting in the kitchen, following recipes, trying new foods with my partner, Drew. One more thing that research has proven has countless benefits on our health is having a dog. Right? Isn't she the cutest? A couple months ago, we welcomed Friday into our family, and I could never have been prepared for the unconditional love I feel for this dog. Those of you who are parents in the room, I can't even begin to imagine how you feel about your kids, because Friday is my heart and soul. In addition to, helping your mood, dogs also improve cognition, they improve reaction time. I could go on forever. I've just been so surprised by how many incredible health benefits they have. I've also been so refreshed by having somebody else's needs to think about first thing in the morning. I need my coffee as soon as I wake up at 5:30 in the morning because it takes me a long time to get going, but this dog needs to go out. And she's my first priority at that start of the day. So it's been really wonderful and benefits I never could have imagined. So highly recommend getting a dog. If you're allergic, I think allergy medicine is probably cheaper than antidepressants, but definitely get a dog if you can. Over this past year specifically, in my 5 years of recovery, I've learned countless precious life lessons simply from just navigating this second life I'm leading. One of those is the importance of accepting when bad things happen. My parents continually told me throughout my recovery, that first year where I lived with them and spent my days on the couch and really didn't do very much, that I'm living my new normal, which I heard, I understood, I repeated it back, but I don't think I really believed it until recently. This new normal is me with imperfections and all. My short-term memory loss does get in the way sometimes, hence the hesitations and the stumbling over words sometimes right now, but I'm doing the best that I can. We always tell Friday, do your best, and how can you get mad at a puppy who's trying hard to learn a new trick, right? It's the same with us. We need to give ourselves that same patience and that same grace. As long as we do our best, what more can you ask? Another key lesson I've learned over the course of these past 5 years, but especially this past year, is the importance of gratitude. I remember in the weeks following my stroke when I was back at my folks' house, all my stuff was still in China. I didn't know which end was up, and my life was completely different than it had been only days prior. Someone saying, "Oh, thank goodness you survived. You must be so grateful to be alive." And in all honesty, there were days where I wasn't. When your life is turned upside down and you don't know how to navigate it, how can you be necessarily grateful for the unknown that's that scary? I remember the first time I had the opportunity and had been cleared by my doctor to go out for a quick or a very slow jog around my parents' block months after the stroke. I was out of shape because I hadn't had physical activity in months. And I had aches and pains because I hadn't been exercising. I remember slogging along around their block, less than a mile, and through the tears welling up in my eyes, I thought, I get to feel out of shape, and I get to feel these aches and pains in my knee. I try every day to remind myself, at least once, I get to do what I'm doing right now. Gratitude is so important to our health. Another key factor I learned, and lesson I'm so grateful for, is the importance of hope. And I highly recommend, if you are recovering from trauma or crisis or simply a really challenging time in your life and you don't feel like you have hope, surround yourself with people who can have it for you. For me, that was my parents. They never gave up on me, and they didn't let me give up on myself. While being a stroke survivor is part of my identity, I've only in this last 6 to 12 months learned that it is not all of my identity, nor did I choose it. But the best thing we can do sometimes in the wake of the unknown or the unthinkable like this is simply show up and do our best. And if our best isn't as good as it used to be, but it's all we've got today, you'll be surprised how people will be grateful for you simply showing up. So, thank you.